This is a Pubcast Shot. I'm John Loomer. Frequency is not your problem. Let's go. Now, meta advertisers have dozens of metrics to look at. While they all tell a version of the story behind what is going on with your ads, there are certainly levels of importance. One metric advertisers often look at is frequency, or more specifically, the average number of times people have seen your ads. Now, frequency can absolutely be an issue. Meta ran a study in 2022 that suggested average performance dropped by 45% once frequency reached an average of 4. But I'd argue that it's far from as simple as saying we need to avoid reaching a frequency of 4 or some other magical threshold. Context of frequency matters. There are also times when a high frequency might actually be a good thing. I'd also say that the way ads work has changed a whole lot since that study came out in 2022, and that matters. But when it's a problem, you will know. Let me explain. First, the context of your average frequency is extremely important. So let's assume you reach that magical threshold of a frequency of 4. That means that the total number of impressions is 4 times as high as the total number of people reached. But is this at the campaign or ad set level? Because if it is, that means that people have seen your ads an average of 4 times, but it's not necessarily the same ad. And that's important. Seeing 4 different ads is not the same thing as seeing the same ad 4 different times. What placements contributed to this average frequency of 4? Some placements are more intrusive than others. If all of your delivery is going to feeds, then people will feel that average frequency much more than if it's happening in the right column or other low-impact placements. And what window of time is that frequency? If you have an average frequency of 4, did that happen over 2 weeks or 2 years? Now, it's amazing to me that this is never clarified when people talk about frequencies to avoid. Time is obviously a critical factor. So seeing 4 different ads and 4 different placements over a 6-month period is not the same thing as seeing the same ad in the Facebook feed 4 times in 4 days. That should be obvious. The context of your frequency is really important. Now, second, there are times when a high frequency might actually be beneficial. A high frequency may not be what you want when trying to collect email addresses for your free PDF. At some point, either they're interested or they're not. It would make sense that there's a point when additional impressions would be a waste of money. But instead, consider the high commitment purchase. It could be a car or real estate or something else that customers will be paying for over time. The typical person will not act on the first impression. They may need many more impressions to convince them to buy. This is also where it may be beneficial to get many types of ads shown to help close the sale. Even if it's not high commitment, your goal may simply be awareness. Think of TV commercials as an example. You'll see the same commercial over and over and over and over. Eventually, you know exactly what they're going to say. You may see that as annoying, but if the commercial does its job, you will also know the brand behind it. So there might be times when brand awareness is your goal and a high frequency would be beneficial. And finally, you will know when frequency is a problem. Your performance will drop noticeably when your frequency is too high. And of course, there are times when it could be correlation and not causation. There could be other factors like competition and seasonality that are ultimately forcing up your cost per conversion. But Meta will tell you when frequency is an issue through creative fatigue or a creative limited warning. These suggest that performance is down because of frequency. Now, I'd argue that if you're following best practices, creative fatigue is unlikely to be an issue these days anyway. You're leaning into algorithmic targeting with broad audiences. You're utilizing all placements. You're creating more ads than you used to. And you're creating countless variations due to text options, Advantage Plus Creative, or different formats by placement. You're doing all the things that I've been talking about on this podcast. And all of this reflects that you've bought into creative diversification, which is how Meta says you can get the most of Andromeda. And if you're doing these things, frequency as a detrimental signal should rarely come up. Here's the bottom of the glass. Frequency is one of dozens of metrics you might look at, and it can provide some valuable insight, but do not obsess over it. Do not follow a specific threshold that you will not cross without context or some other meaning behind it. Ultimately, let results be your guide. And if you follow best practices, you'll be much less likely to run into these problems with frequency and creative fatigue anyway. To learn more about creative fatigue and why all of these things matter, check out my blog post at johnloomer.com/fatigue. I have written well over 1,000 blog posts over the years for johnloomer.com on the topic of Facebook, now Meta advertising. And this includes anything from tutorials to new feature announcements to case studies and tests and experiments and a little bit of everything in between. To be honest with you, my blog, is what I became famous for. It's why I have a business in the first place. Now, while not everybody consumes content in this way, especially a detailed tutorial, which is kind of my expertise, maybe you do. And I hope you're following me there. I publish one blog post every week right now. I've changed my cadence through the years, but that's where I'm falling these days so that I can also do podcast episodes and videos as well. You may not be alerted right now once I've published a new blog post, but we can change that. Just go to johnloomer.com/alerts. Thanks again for joining me today. Until next time, do awesome things. I'm out.